they can't trust us in this bitch. Cause I'm trying to bust nuts in this.
Harleezy. Jack Harlow and Doja Cat's new song Just Us captures the flirtation between two young people in a restaurant while being surrounded by John Mayer, Matt Damon, Pink Pantheress, and predatory nepo baby Nicholas Braun, allegedly. Now, how this video ties into the song, I'm not totally sure. I guess it's showing two young, sexy people with some kind of chemistry. They're friends with rich, other problematic, famous people. Now, to be fair, this song is average at best, not the best work of either one of these artists, but it left me with some haunting questions. What is the state of Jack Harlow's career? So quick backstory on what I know of young Jack Harlow. Jack Harlow is from somewhere in America when he was born, sometime after me. And basically the way his career started was in high school. He released a series of rap singles and videos, and it picked up the attention of major record label. You know, he had some decent skills for his age group, but then he very quickly got picked up and had a meteoric rise. You know, this guy's very charismatic. I guess he is attractive to people. To be real, I think it's mainly his charisma and the fact that he's white. You know, after releasing a series of singles, getting cosigns, even possibly being called the savior of hip hop, he dropped his first album, and their first album was received fairly lukewarm. And with that first album dropping, there was a building conversation of if Jack Harlow was hoisted up in a position that maybe he didn't deserve. So then he dropped his second album, and after that second album dropped, that conversation and the doubts and the cracks in his armor started to solidify more. He didn't really have much to say, and for all the hype, it didn't seem he could really deliver, that he might be being put in a position that he didn't really deserve for mysterious reasons. Now his star is falling. I think he's in a kind of rocky place. He wasn't in such a solid place that he was in a couple of years ago. And to be real, after what I'm gonna call the great rap shift context, I don't know what his career is going to be, which leads me to question number 2. What is the state of Doja Cat's career? Doja Cat had a very interesting rise because she was on a label for a little while. She's very clearly talented. She can sing, she can rap, she can dance, she's attractive. You know, she has a lot of stuff that could make her a star, but early in her career, it seemed like her record label didn't seem particularly interested in doing anything with those talents. So she did what I'm gonna call a Frank Ocean, where basically she made that Moo song, created a music video for it, and got so much hype off it that her record label had to pay attention to her. And after that initial push to get them to pay attention to her, she has been one of the most consistent pop stars that we've had in the music scene, especially in the back half of the 2010s and then the early part of the 2020s. But after initial 5 years, which I'm not gonna lie, they basically like ran Doja Cat into the ground to the point that she has like 3 or 4 different versions of that Say So song.
It's been a long time since you fell in love. Been a long time since you fell in love. It's been a long time since you fell in love.
She pivoted into what I call the Scarlet era. Now, it's a pretty tumultuous time for her, even though in terms of her numbers, she was still doing well, but you saw her pushing back on her imagery, right? Like in the first initial part of her career, it was very hypersexualized, very much like eye candy, you know, these dresses, emphasizing her looks. The music is very sexual, very playful. You can clearly see that she's talented though, but with Scarlet, she pivoted into, I guess, the like ugly girl, quote unquote ugly girl look, but she pivoted where she chopped her hair, she started leaning into darker imagery, promising with Scarlet that she was going to be shifting her image and her sound, which I was actually kind of down for initially, right? But then during this Scarlet stuff, she started having a series of controversies popping up, and just in terms of how the way she moves, for me, one of the things, especially artistically, that I didn't like about that Scarlet era was for how much she was saying she was like shifting and she wasn't gonna play this pop game anymore. Other than the actual packaging of the album, it's pretty much just the pop stuff that Doja Cat was doing with a little bit more edge, right? Like lyrically, it's still kind of the same lyrical stuff she's been doing. It's just that the packaging was different. And now her career is in a place where, very similar to Jack Harlow, when she initially came out, she had a lot of attention, a lot of numbers, but after the Scarlet era, I see her stuff is starting to slow down, and I do think she has some stuff that she needs to worry about. One is like, she's getting older, right? She's approaching 30. Now, of course, by no means is Doja Cat actually old, but for a young female pop star in the position that she's in, 30 is a threat. that looming behind her, but she, like Jack Harlow, has another thing of the great rap context shift that I wonder is going to affect her. How did the Kendrick and Drake beef hurt Jack Harlow and Doja Cat? In 2024, we had the greatest rap beef to ever happen so far between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Now, when this beef went down, Drake was the king of hip hop at the time. He had been setting the context and the meta for what the rap game was from the 2010s into the early 2020s, and he was undisputed, right? And with that, with Drake being around as long as he was, he had a great significant amount of influence. But with him losing that battle, the context of the rap game has shifted. I would say in Drake's era, it was much more about, chasing pop appeal, chasing numbers. You don't really talk about anything political. It leans into the typical rap kind of stuff of like money, women, opulence, look how cool I am, I'm the manliest. And someone like a Jack Harlow is what I would say a pretty direct child of Drake, right? If you look at the way Jack Harlow moved in his career and the way his rhyme schemes are and his bars and his imagery, he's very much in the image of someone like Drake and the way he moves and stuff, to the point that they did a song together and that lineage is even more apparent, right? At the song where they're at the Kentucky Derby and stuff like that, where after listening to that song, it made it pretty clear to me that Jack Harlow is a Diet Coke Drake. But with Drake losing that battle, I think the meta has shifted in a way where Jack Harlow's career was already starting to slow down and have some danger with the fact that Jack Harlow doesn't really have much to say. I mean, one is he's incredibly young. Two, and this is a problem that a lot of white rappers run into whenever they join into the rap game, is that unless you're someone like an Eminem or very few occasions like an LP or Mac Miller, you're not really adding anything new to the rap game. You are very much in the position of looking up other people who are of culture and waiting till they do something and then taking on those attributes for your own gain. And Jack Harlow hasn't really added anything to the rap game. And now that I think the meta has shifted to Kendrick, which I would say what Kendrick brings into the game is a emphasis on lyricism. You need to have a message. You need to have some type of tie to culture. You cannot just be culture hopping around. And unfortunately, those are not things that Jack Harlow has on his side. So if the context of rap has been shifted, I think this is going to ultimately lead to a bad thing for Jack Harlow unless he finds a way to pivot. Because right now with this song with Doja Cat, he's very much still leaning into the Drake influences, but those influences and those ties, at least in this current rap landscape, are not going to work particularly well for you. So unless Jack Harlow has such a diehard, particularly white fan base that keep feeding into him to keep his career going, he might want to look to pivot. And he did some acting and stuff. That might be something he wants to do more of because he is charismatic. But now let's shift. Now Doja Cat's in more of an interesting position in terms of how this rap beef might hurt her. So Doja Cat is very clearly a child of Nicki Minaj. In her flow, in her presentation, there's a pretty clear lineage between the two, right? And to be real, I think Doja Cat is way more talented than Jack Harlow. So she has more talent to hang her hat on. And she is black. She's mixed, but she is black. So she is actually tied into the culture. But there are a series of things that is going to hurt Doja Cat in this great rap context shift, right? Which is Doja Cat's music, especially, Scarlet being her latest release. One of the things I would ding Scarlet for is that it made me more aware of the fact that I don't think Doja Cat has much else to give other than like sex rap for the most part, right? Like she's not going to say anything political. She's not going to do anything super metaphorical. She's not going to really do anything high concept. And now she's been on this turn for like 5 years and it's starting to grow stale. But I do think there is a connection to Drake that most people don't tie to her, which is in the way she moves. She's actually more like a Drake, right? Like she is of mixed race like a Drake. She has racial ambiguity going on. She's lighter skinned, but also if you pay attention to Doja Cat's life outside of the rap stuff, this blackness that she has in her songs feels more like cosplay, right? Because if you look at her outside of her actual music and the image, I don't see her around a lot of black people. And when she talks about her love interests and stuff and who she's actually dating, she pretty much only seems to exclusively date white boys. Hey, you can like white boys if you want, that's totally cool. But when you have music that is so black and you're referring to people in certain ways,
These dumbass niggas. Because
and talking about certain attributes, it feels weird. Taurus, I had hinted at this in an earlier segment, she has a controversy of being in white supremacist chat rooms, basically playing into these white boys' sexual kinks with black women, and also during her Scarlet press and trying to be edgy, I guess someone like a Kanye, she was like platforming and wearing merch from known white supremacists like Sam Hyde and stuff. And I think in the great context shift that Kendrick has created, where you are going to need more ties to culture, you are not going to get away with being so ambiguous in terms of what you stand for and in terms of having receipts of what kind of black cultural ties you have. This is going to hurt Doja. And there's also another aspect, which is with that great shift, with an artist like Doechii coming up right behind her, which has so many attributes that Doja Cat has, but has more cultural ties, and of course is like unambiguously black. And also with Doja Cat moving into seen as an older artist, I'm kind of curious how long she will hold on to being one of the top pop stars, because at least when I check her numbers and stuff, she is starting to cool off. So if you watch this video, let me know what you think. I could be off base. Have you listened to the song? What do y'all think of it? Actually, no, I'm not off base. I'm definitely right.